Orlando reportedly have interest in him. The Warriors, on the other hand, reportedly have interest in Jonathan Isaac. So I'm trying to formulate a deal here with Chris Paul and Moses Moody heading to Orlando, and Jonathan Isaac being the first piece that comes back from a Warrior standpoint. Isaac's a really interesting player because he's clearly one of the best defenders in the league when he's up, going and healthy. He's got the nickname Minister of Defense for a reason. Going back to I think it was the start of the 1920 season, I think he averaged 1.6 steals and 2.3 blocks per game. Just an absolutely unreal defender. And you see what OG Anunoby has done for the Knicks. He's out injured at the moment, but before that, the Knicks 14-2 or something in the first 16 games with Anunoby in the lineup. You see what he's been able to do for the Knicks with his defensive capacity. And Isaac could be similar. However, he just cannot stay on the floor. He's played 77 games since the start of the 1920 season. That's 5 years. Played 77 games in 5 years, not even a full season. So he's back. He's playing at the moment. I think he played about 21 minutes yesterday for the Magic. Probably not the player that he once was, or the player that the Magic hoped they would get out of him when they drafted him 6th overall back in the day. But still, certainly a difference-making defender. 6'10", play at the 4. You'd expect that if the Warriors were to get him, he'd play quite a lot at the 4 or the 5 next to Draymond as well. Just fortify the defensive capability. Can shoot the ball okay from three-point range, but I think he's under 30% so far this season, which isn't great. He's had years closer to nearly 40%, but on his career, okay three-point shooter, not a great three-point shooter. But obviously he's going to bring the defensive size, not a center as such, but he is 6'10", long wingspan, 7'1" wingspan, I think. And just a great defensive player when he's up and running. So that's the first piece. And then obviously with Chris Paul's contract, you'd have to get someone else. This is where it gets interesting. I think the Magic would probably, if they were to do it, they would want to give up Markelle Fultz. That would alleviate some issues for the Warriors. The whole Chris Paul thing, the weekends back-to-back was really the first time where Brandon Podziemski had played as the backup point guard for the Warriors, basically in all his minutes this season. Otherwise, he's played with one of Steph, CP3, or Corey Joseph. Kojo out of the rotation, Lester Quinones in, gives more of the ball handling and playmaking responsibilities to Pods. So it's really interesting, like, if they do wish to move Chris Paul, what do the Warriors do with their backup point guard situation? Are they happy for Pods to be the backup point guard, kind of sixth man straight away for the rest of the season? Like, what does that look like if the Warriors actually make the playoffs? Are they still going to be comfortable then with Pods as the backup point guard? Or what is it? I guess if you bring in Fultz in that situation, you have another option there as your backup point guard. And Markelle Fultz, obviously former first overall pick of the Sixers, career hasn't quite panned out, obviously, as he would have liked. However, he still made himself into a nice, rotation player who could come in and be capable of playing 15, 20, 25 minutes a game. Had a really good year last year. I think he averaged nearly 15 points per game, 5.7 assists, 3.9 rebounds, 1.5 steals per game as well. Shot over 50% from the floor. Obviously not a great shooter, but he's really dynamic and athletic, can get to the rim. So not sure he necessarily fits the way that the Warriors want to play, but it would be a different look than what CP3 would give you with his more methodical style of play. What I mean by Fultz are just like the lack of three-point shooting and some of the second unit stuff. If you've got a TJD or a Looney out there, I'm not sure how that necessarily fits, although the pick and roll kind of stuff with Fultz and TJD might be interesting. He obviously doesn't have any playoff experience, basically, so I don't know how that would work out there. It's an interesting thought, I think, from the Warriors standpoint. If you just said 2-for-2 swap Paul and Moody for Isaac and Fultz, I wouldn't do it just because you cannot trust the body of either. If you're guaranteed that Isaac was going to be fully healthy across the next, the rest of his contract, which he's got another $17.4 million deal for next season. If you could guarantee that, then I might think about it just because he is such a difference-making player on defense. But with the injury history of both players, I just wouldn't do that. However, if I'm the Warriors, I'd be pushing heavily for that second player. If I was definitely getting Isaac, I'd push for the second player to be Wendell Carter Jr., who the franchise reportedly had interest in going back to the 2020 draft. With obviously, they ended up taking James Wiseman, but there was a report at the time that the Warriors were interested in dealing the second overall pick to the Chicago Bulls for Carter and the fourth pick, which in hindsight would have been a good deal. There were reports kind of a few weeks ago that Carter was potentially on the table. He's had some injury issues himself over the last couple of seasons, and that seems to have gone away now. I think Orlando seemed to be pretty keen on keeping him. But again, if they were desperate for a veteran point guard and had some high hopes for a young talent like Moody, then I think the Warriors would definitely try and push for Carter, who I think would be a great fit in the Warriors system. More of an offensive-minded player than a defensive-minded player, but a great rebounder. A guy that does give you that size at 6'10", 6'11", and he's also a three-point shooting threat. I think he's shooting 40% from range on the season, and I think that thought has always been an interesting one for the Warriors in terms of, can you find a 5-out spacing big man to play next to Draymond? Don't know what that would do with the starting lineup. I still think that Carter might come off the bench in that scenario and then still play 25 minutes or whatever else. But I think he would be a really good fit. And so if it was Isaac and Carter for Paul and Moody, I think that's a deal that the Warriors would certainly think about making. Maybe Orlando would need a bit more. You could chuck a lottery protected first round pick or a second round pick in there in that deal. I don't know if there's any Magic fans listening, then let me know.